I'm replying to Nietzschean 101's post about the death penalty, which he apparently supports. Nietzsche, and I think there's some good reasons to be against the death penalty. One of which you mentioned, the possibility of executing the innocent. Not only is that a possibility, but that may have occurred. There are some cases in which people have thought subsequent to the execution of someone that they were indeed innocent of the crime. But even if it is just a possibility, it seems to me that that's reason enough to oppose the death penalty. It would be appalling to execute an innocent person. There are also some practical considerations. Now, I know that you said that you're more interested in the death penalty from a theoretical perspective than just a practical one, but it seems to me that when you take up the serious business of taking life from people, that you have to be concerned about the practical considerations, and you have to think about them and deal with them, and just not sort of confine yourself to the theoretical considerations. There is the unequal application of the death penalty along racial and socioeconomic lines. Now, studies have established that this has occurred, and it seems like there's almost an inevitability about it. People can't be freed completely from their prejudices, and as a consequence of that, it seems to me there's a good reason for opposing the death penalty. There's also another reason that I don't hear discussed very often, although it has been discussed in some circles, and that's what's called the brutalization effect. Basically, what the brutalization effect says is that imposing the death penalty can coarsen people's feelings about the sanctity of life, and that can result in the following. First of all, judges or jurors can impose the death penalty in more cases than they perhaps should. Maybe they should look at more mitigating factors for in a particular case than they do, and they just go ahead and just concentrate on the aggravating factors and impose the death penalty as a consequence. Secondly, it can result in legislators increasing the number of capital offenses to more than just murder. Now, there have been attempts to do that very thing, to impose the death penalty for things like rape and other kinds of crimes. Thirdly, more citizens holding life in lower esteem could increase the murder rate. Now, there apparently was one study of the murder rate during the 20th century, during the years that the death penalty was in effect. And it turns out that in New York City, for example, the murder rate actually increased. And that seemed to be concomitant with a coarsening of people's feelings about the sanctity of life in the New York City area. So the brutalization effect is another reason for opposing the death penalty. Now, I don't know if you were suggesting this or not, but I want to just say that one doesn't have to oppose retributive justice to oppose the death penalty. After all, a lot of people who believe that the death penalty is wrong also believe that life imprisonment for capital offenses is a just punishment. And they have a very retributive feeling about that. You did suggest that murderers deserve the death penalty because they murdered others, and you suggested along these lines that they deserve the punishment in kind to the crime that they committed. This sounds very much like the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth sort of approach to the death penalty, which is a widespread kind of belief. The only thing that I would say about this is that people who marshal forth this sort of in-kind punishment for the death penalty don't marshal the in-kind punishment for criminals who commit all sorts of crimes. For example, should the state require that rapists be raped? I mean, should there be someone whose job it is to rape rapists? Should torturers be tortured? Should there be someone who has the job, who's paid by the state to torture people? You know, I think the larger question about the death penalty is, at what point does the state or society become the very monsters that it deplores by imposing things like the death penalty? So I'd be very interested in what you think about what I had to say. And thank you very much for your thoughtful post.